Good morning, friends. My name is Darren St. George, and welcome to another Monday morning program with Sal St. George. If you've been with us before, welcome back. It's always a pleasure to see you. If this is your first time, welcome to the party, because this is how we start each and every week, celebrating entertainment's leaders, legends, and icons, and this morning is, of course, no exception. We are heading to Plainville, Connecticut to visit once again one of our friends for the holidays, the Witch's Dungeon Classic Movie Museum. And we are joined with Cortland and Steve, and I can already see them here. Hello, Steve, Cortland, how are you?
How are you? Good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Hi there, and welcome to Monsters Holiday here at the Witch's Dungeon.
Monsters Holiday, I like it. And good morning, Pop. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. And Steve, Cortland, I always I forgot to ask you last time we visited, how did you come up with the name Witch's Dungeon?
Well, that's because of Zenobia here. She was my very first creation. She was the first life-size figure that I made, and her voice is done by June Foray during the tour. And because she was my first creation, that's why I named it after her as the Witch's Dungeon.
Wow, and she's also your logo.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. Steve, can I ask you, can you rotate the camera to the side? This way we have a landscape view. Yeah, there we go. Even better.
Nice. Very good.
All right. So last time we visited with you, obviously you had a lot to show us, just based on your museum and collection.
A lot more now.
And now you have a lot more, and everybody looks very festive. I see Lou Costello back there, looking like he's in the holiday spirit.
Well, we have Lou Costello from Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, with Glenn Strange as the Frankenstein monster in the crate. And we have a number of vintage toys that you're going to be seeing throughout the show. Even down here, we have several toys from Rocky and Bullwinkle, and we have Natasha and Boris Badenov, Bambi, the Wicked Witch of the West, and the whole Star Trek crew down there.
You would appreciate this. I many moons ago interviewed Glenn Strange, and he told me that the hardest part of playing the monster with Lou Costello was that he kept doing antics while they were filming and making him laugh. And the director started telling him, "Come on, you got to play it straight." And he said, "Well, you tell this son of a bitch to stop making me laugh." And he got really angry with him.
Well, because it was, Frankenstein monster is supposed to be very stoic and not laugh. And it was Glenn Strange.
You're absolutely right. And that's why that movie was so popular, because all the monsters played it straight.
That's right.
And Abbott and Costello did their thing.
Yes. So now we're first going to go into the makeup in the prop room. So if Steve follows me around here, we also have some animated Warner Brothers characters here as well.
And I'm going to flip this camera around. Give me 1 second, please.
No, go right ahead.
There we go.
This is incredible, because I recognize that you were decorating some of the exhibits, but I didn't realize it also meant you had a whole collection of holiday items to show as well.
Oh, yes.
Wow.
So we'll get into that when we get to the Wax Museum. But in here, there's a new exhibit we just added, which is the Aurora Monsters and the bottle kits. And see down here, we have a whole case full of them. These I made when I was 8 or 10 years old. And this is what started the museum. They're only 8 inches tall. I wanted them life-size. So that's why I started the museum to begin with. And I wanted to have people be aware of the makeup that was involved in these characters.
Yeah, Steve, go a little bit slower so we can enjoy these. This was every kid had these in the 60s and 70s.
Oh, yes. And the covers of these kits were beautiful because they were done by artist James Bama. And we did an interview with James Bama on our documentary. And the artwork on the boxes was just incredible.
And this is you with James Bama.
Yeah.
Back here in this photo.
Do they still sell these kits?
I think there are some companies that have taken it on. But what's the big deal is, right, what we have here we have some posters or banners that were in the hobby shops way back in the 1960s. And our biggest edition right now is a life-size Aurora model kit of the Frankenstein monster that was given to me by Ted Haynes.
Wow.
That is about, what would you say, 4 foot high?
Mm-hmm.
And then we have a larger version of the model kit, but he's all decorated for Christmas too.
And I noticed one of the kits, that was your witch again?
Go back down here.
What was that?
In the showcase, is that your witch again? Is that
Well,
her?
I named her to look like my witch because she came out after I created the Zenobia, the witch, who is the logo of the Witch's Dungeon.
And then don't forget the big Frankie over here.
Oh yes, the reason Frankenstein is disjointed in that one is because when we did the Aurora documentary, Zachary, the cool ghoul, he hosted it. And he wasn't supposed to do the models quite right. So that's why it was built wrong. And we did that on purpose, of course. He also made a Super Frankenstein, which is in back there. I don't know if you can see it, but...
Cortland, you mentioned twice already about this documentary. Is it something that we can view? Is there a place that we can see this?
Well, we have it available here at the museum, which people can buy the documentary. And so let's go to some of the original props. Here is the original Metaluna Mutant from This Island Earth, 1955. This is the actual headpiece that was used in the movie. And we're in the process of doing a life-size Metaluna Mutant that we'll be adding to the museum sometime next year. And then up on top of the next case, we have Godzilla. And that's from the late 1980s. And that's directly from the mold for Toho Studios of Godzilla. Don't forget, they had to make a new Godzilla for each movie because, well, he took quite a beating at the previous film. And then the next shelf down, we have a tribute to June Foray, who was a great friend. June was the voice of Rocky the Flying Squirrel and Natasha, as well as Cindy Lou Who from How the Grinch Stole Christmas. And that's an original cell of the Grinch that was given to me by Chuck Jones for the museum. And June also was the voice of Witch Hazel in the Donald Duck cartoon Trick or Treat. And she was also the voice of Witch Hazel in the Bugs Bunny cartoons. So she does the voice of my witch, Zenobia, which we'll play for you in a short while too.
Darren, don't you get a kick out of it, Darren, that we've gone to the Chuck Jones Museum and now we're seeing Chuck Jones' work on display?
It is. It's when he mentioned that, when he mentioned Chuck Jones, I was thinking back, and I don't think we had visited the Chuck Jones Museum last time we were here. This may have been the first time we had some of his artwork on display. But I do remember the Godzilla piece because we used that in our one of our trailers. We love showing off that Godzilla.
Well, also, of course, my great uncle, which I mentioned before, was Henry Hull, the actor. And he was the first movie werewolf in The Werewolf of London in 1935. Next year is the 90th anniversary of that film. And Uncle Henry was really responsible for me getting to know the great makeup artists and effects people.
And these are just some of the figures?
Yeah.
Well, model kits and things of the sort.
And then the next shelf down, we have an original cell of Ratigan from The Great Mouse Detective. Of course, that was voiced by Vincent Price, and he gave me that as a Christmas present several years back. Vincent was a great guy, and he co-starred with my uncle, Henry Hull, when he did Master of the World. And that's how I got to know Vincent really well. And he also sent me a live cast of himself, cast in wax. which looks very real, especially when you see it in person.
Wow.
So Vincent sent it to me and didn't tell me beforehand. So this arrived, and you can imagine opening it up and seeing that inside. But he did call me, but an hour too late. And he says, "Oh, did you get my box?" And I said, "Yes." It was quite a surprise. He said, "Ooh, I thought you'd like that."
And
it seems like he had a good sense of humor.
Yes, he did. Yes.
I recently learned Vincent Price, he is credited as a rapper.
Michael Jackson Thriller.
That's right. In addition to everything he accomplished in a lot of voiceover work, but the Thriller video is technically listed as a rap for his contribution in there.
I guess it would be.
Man of many trades.
Yeah, right.
And then on the bottom shelf here, we have something really rare. George C. Scott's makeup as the Beast from the Hallmark Hall of Fame, Beauty and the Beast from the 1970s. Hallmark should be ashamed of themselves. They never made it available on video that people could get that. And it's a wonderful version. The makeup was done by John Chambers. And, of course, George C. Scott played the Beast. And, I mean, with some of the, shall we say, not so perfect Christmas movies Hallmark makes, they should have put out Beauty and the Beast because it's a classic.
Do you know who played Beauty in that film?
It was his wife, and I can't think of her name right now.
Okay.
She was the actress also.
And who's staring back at us?
And that's one of the original aliens from Close Encounters of the Third Kind there.
Interesting story, too. I think we may have touched on this last time. Originally in the production, they did not have the mouths. But on the day of the shoot, I think that they ended up wanting to have...
Spielberg wanted to have a mouth.
So they brought out the X-Acto blade, and everybody got mouths.
They roughly cut it over, yeah.
And you can see it. I mean, you can't really tell here, but it is very crudely hewn.
Wow.
And was it true they used all children to portray the aliens?
Yes, and as a matter of fact, it was girls, because they found out that the girls didn't have to go to the bathroom as often as the boys did, so they didn't have to take them out of the outfits that quickly.
Somebody wrote in, was it Colleen Dewhurst that was George's wife?
No, it wasn't Colleen Dewhurst. I can't think of her name offhand. I don't think that was it.
Okay.
Up on top here, we have James Gregory's makeup as General Urko from Planet of the Apes. And all the apes' makeup was done by John Chambers. And I don't know if you can show the picture there, but we have John in the white shirt next to me holding his Oscar.
A little bit of a glare. Sorry about that.
Well, he was quite young.
I'm in my disco clothes there. And here you see, of course, we've shown this before, is The Exorcist had one of only two that were really used in the film where her head spun around. And the eyes are very weird because they're based on cougar eyes, not human eyes. And that's why they have an otherworldly look about them.
Cortland, that may be my favorite piece in your collection. I know you're going to show us new things, but it's going to be hard for me personally to top that. And I even used it in the graphic for our program today.
Oh.
And because I like it so much. And my wife, Cassandra, was despising that choice because as she's working on the program and promoting and sharing, she's constantly looking at that Linda Blair head staring back at her.
Now that you bring it up, Darren, Cortland, Steve, do you each have a favorite item in the museum?
Oh, it really would be tough for me to choose.
Yeah, it's very hard. They're all kind of hinged upon each other in a way.
Yeah, especially because both John Chambers and Dick Smith I learned so much from the two of them. And that's how I was able to do the figures that you see in the Wax Museum, which will be going in there pretty soon, because I learned so much from both of them. I did go to art school, University of Hartford Art School. But to be honest, I learned more from John Chambers and Dick Smith than I did in art school, quite frankly. Because don't forget, whatever they make has to be really good because it's going to be shown on a 100-foot wide screen. And you'd see every little flaw. If it wasn't perfect, that's quite amazing.
Yeah,
and it looks
one
like
of
we
our
haven't.
we have such a great following. Trish Vanderveer.
That's you're right. Trish Vanderveer. That was George C. Scott's wife. Yes.
We also have a question came in earlier. Do you have Huckleberry Hound?
No, I'm sorry, we don't.
That's okay. But if you do have questions as we're going through, or you want us to spend more time on an item, just let us know. Send it into the chat, or also on Facebook. You can mention it in the chat, and I'll be happy to relay that over to the team.
Okay. Well, we'll go back to the cabinet here so we can see the old age makeup that Dick Smith did for Dustin Hoffman from Little Big Man. And that's when you see that in person, it looks very real.
And these were the hands as well.
Yeah, he did a test with these hands like gloves, and he found out it still looked like gloves. So he used the back part of the hand and applied it directly to Dustin's own hand because it wouldn't move the way he wanted to.
It looks eerily very much like Jonathan Frid's makeup from Dark Shadows when he's
because Dick Smith also did Jonathan Frid's makeup as Barnabas Collins when he became old.
How did you acquire this, Cortland?
All the pieces that you've seen were given to me by John Chambers or Dick Smith.
I'll jump over here real quick.
There you can see that's me with Dick Smith.
And the Little Big Man head.
Yeah. And then below you can see a before and after shot of Dustin Hoffman from Little Big Man.
And this is Dick in his studio.
That's right.
That's in New York, right?
That was in New York State, yeah. And
a little bit of a glare. Apologies.
Next to that, you can see me with Linda Blair holding her head.
So
I see you had a sign that we just passed for Nosferatu.
Oh, yeah. Because Steve did that artwork. He did an audio version of our print of Nosferatu with his own score.
Are you looking forward to the new Nosferatu coming out?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I don't think that it needs to be remade, but it's already been remade. Herzog did a beautiful job, in my opinion. And I think Eggers, based on his work with everything from The Lighthouse to The Witch, is going to really catch the aesthetic. And the main thing for me is, like, I enjoyed Herzog's version, but it just, from what I've seen of Eggers' trailer, it really captures that Biedermeier era of Germany, which for me is very important in translating that.
Yes.
That otherworldly, timeless feel of that film.
That was why I love the music that you did for Nosferatu, because it has that European gypsy feel to it. So here's some of the other pieces that John Chambers gave me that you see here from Planet of the Apes, and it's beneath the Planet of the Apes, where they were exposed to radiation.
And these were screen used. This one in particular.
That one was actually used on camera, as was the overmask that you see on the bottom.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we have Kim Hunter. I love the line that she says to Charlton Heston near the end of the film, where she said, "Well, I would kiss you, but you're so damn ugly."
Yeah, that's a great line. I think that's a Rod Serling script.
It is. Actually, he greatly improved on the book. And here in the middle, we have Mars Attacks head, and that was used for the CGI animators so they could see him 360 degrees all the way around.
That's a movie that doesn't get discussed very often, Mars Attacks.
I think it's a lot of fun. That's a Tim Burton film.
It's pretty outrageous, and I went back to it not too long ago. I was surprised by how many cameos are in that film.
Yes.
Where else are you going to see Tom Jones, like, sing in a post-apocalyptic scenario?
Not unusual.
Thank you, Ellen. Ellen says it's one of her favorite films. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
I'm sorry. We have Fred Gwynne from The Munsters, and Fred was a big guy. He was 6'5". And just a little side note, if you ever see him getting into the Munster car, you would see him lift his foot, but you'd never see him going in because the boots didn't fit in the car. He had to take the boots off, and he drove the car in his stocking feet.
And this is from an actual bust of Fred Gwynne, right?
That's from an actual live cast of Fred Gwynne, yeah.
And then I think we saw that car, Darren, when we went to the
Volo Museum.
Yeah.
We saw the Munsters car.
That's a great car, yeah. And here we have the earliest version of the creature from the Black Lagoon. This is quite rare that way. He was meant to be more eel-like, smoother. And they did do a film test with it, but they realized he was not fierce enough. He didn't have enough gills. So they redesigned it to the creature that we know and love. I think you can see in the photograph there next to it, that's Rico Browning with that headpiece on. They did do a test reel with it, but they didn't use it in the film.
But they said he was more eel man and not enough gill man.
Yeah, that's right.
Can we take another peek at the mutant again?
Which one, the Metaluna mutant or this little guy here? Or this guy? We have so many mutants.
Oh, my. I'm not quite sure. Cynthia, which one do you want to see? She just wrote in. I want to take a quick peek.
So these are the Beneath the Planet of the Apes mutants. Oh, metal. All right.
Okay, there we are.
What's interesting about this piece, too, is it's actually foam rubber.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
Which is why it's blasted.
It was foamed only to about here, and then it was the actor's face below that. But John Chambers, who got this for me, he filled it the rest of the way so it wouldn't cave in over the years afterward.
And you can see, too, I mean, as you get close to it, it has a little bit of the time, worn wear to it.
That was 1955.
But nowhere near as what it would have been if it were just latex, because this thing would have been disintegrated by now.
Cortland, Steve, how do you preserve these so that they do not age or deteriorate while they're on display?
Well, Dick Smith gave me a formula that I spray them with once a year, and it keeps it subtle. It won't dry out so much. Also, whenever we touch them, we always use cloth gloves. We don't touch them with our hands because the oils in your hands can deteriorate rubber or latex.
Thank you.
We have a question here. Do you know how long it took to put on the Mars Attack alien face and costume?
Well, it wasn't a person that was in it. It was done completely by computer generation. The little Martians, they weren't someone in a costume.
For Mars Attacks.
For Mars Attacks.
For Mars Attacks, yeah. Oh, it's a shame that they didn't have any live actors running around the set.
Right.
Well, look at how narrow the neck is. You wouldn't be able to have anybody with a neck that narrow.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Not unless they're practically dead.
I just do want to point out as well, you'll see the similarities, obviously, between the Mars Attacks alien
and the Metaluna
mutant, just to show the influence this design has had. This was designed by Millicent Patrick, who really didn't get much credit for any of her designs at that time.
And it was sculpted by Chris Mueller and Jack Kevon. Bud Westmore got all the credit, but he was simply the head of the makeup department. He didn't sculpt anything.
And at that time, it really wasn't conventional, shall we say, to credit someone in Millicent Patrick's situation. And what I mean by that is, like, as a woman in Hollywood, she was just kind of behind the scenes. So they just took a lot of the designs.
He was considered part of the department.
Right, but she didn't really. The same with this. I mean, she was the one who spearheaded this design for the creature from the Black Lagoon. This was all her. She also designed Chernabog from Fantasia as well.
Yeah, that's right.
So she's got quite a laundry list of makeup credits that I think just now are finally getting due.
And this is what Dad and I love, bridging these gaps. It's really phenomenal to know your history and be able to say, look at what has influenced our culture today, our movies today.
That's why it's so sad that most of the movie studios have not kept a lot of the movie props or the makeups. They just let them deteriorate or they just threw them out. which is really a shame because that's why people that come to our museum are so thrilled to see these pieces because it's part of movie history.
And
we've passed it several times, but you have a photograph of Boris Karloff on the wall there.
Oh, yes.
Do you have any connections with him as well?
Well, I'm very good friends with his daughter, Sarah. And the reason we have that photograph there is notice the Frankenstein monster that's standing next to him. That was done, the headpiece was done by Dick Smith. And we have the actual headpiece that was used in that shot right here in our cabinet.
And this was gifted by Dick Smith.
That was gifted by Dick Smith. And he told me he was only had 72 hours to sculpt, cast, paint, and hair it. So 3 o'clock in the morning, just before the photo shoot with Boris Karloff, he ran out of black hair. So if you notice, the back part of the hair is black and the front is dark brown.
But then they just ended up more or less creating the
way it was
camera angle.
You really can't.
Right. Coming out of the darkness.
And then
you've had such an illustrious career, Cortland. If you were putting together a fantasy dinner party, who would you want to have seated with you at that dinner table?
Well, unfortunately, most of the people that I admire most, they've passed away.
No, well, this is a fantasy. If you could bring them back and you could sit down with them, who would you? Because you've had great conversations with amazing, creative people.
Oh, yes, especially Vincent Price. I was very close to Vincent Price. I would probably want to have Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi and Lon Chaney if I had a fantasy dinner. That's for sure.
And then you could have Vincent cook for you because he did that once before.
That's right. Vincent actually cooked beef stroganoff for me once, and it was delicious. He also made his own bread.
Steve, then if I can ask you this question, same thing if you're hosting a dinner party, but it's for any of these monsters and creatures, is there anybody you would want to share a meal with?
I mean, particularly I've always been fond of the Claude Rains iteration of The Invisible Man. That one, to me, as far as the Universal canon goes, was always one that kind of stuck out. But I also feel the same about Lon Chaney, basically every character that he's portrayed, but probably most prominently the Man in the Beaver hat from London After
Lon
Midnight.
Chaney Sr.
Well, yeah.
Because we have Lon Chaney Sr. here in the cabin.
Hold on, I'm not done yet.
I'm sorry.
There's more. No, Max Schreck from Nosferatu.
Oh, yeah.
And probably Alvin Grau, who was the art director for Nosferatu Prana Films. Amazing. In my opinion, did not get enough credit for what became, I guess, the essence of Nosferatu. He was very integral as far as I'm concerned in that. But that's my list.
Wasn't there a movie several years ago, Shadow of the Vampire?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was.
Basically, they were talking about the filming of the movie.
Yeah, that was filmed by a director named Elias Merige. And it was just kind of a take on a what if. There was a lot of speculation, a lot of, I guess, fantasy that Max Schreck was an actual vampire because there was little known about it. But he's actually a very prominent stage actor down in Munich who was sourced out by Alvin Grau. But yeah, I think that whole thing of like Max Schreck being a real vampire came from the filming of the last scene of Nosferatu, which was the most iconic scene of that film, the staircase scene where you see the shadow of the vampire, no pun intended, going up the stairway. That was not included in the original script. That was shot after everyone went home. They got Schreck to come in, and there was a reporter who was on site for that. And I think paraphrasing the quote was, Max Schreck as this vampire leaves one wondering if he is truly of the undead sort or not. And I think that's more or less what perpetuated that myth. But I could go on.
No, that's okay. Steve, we know about Cortland's childhood growing up with all these monsters and fantasy films. And how did you get involved?
If I had to put it into one word, I would say library. My main thing was I'm from a very small town in West Virginia. So that's where I spent all my formative years. It was the Bible Belt. So it was very rare to see anything Halloween celebrated, anything of that nature. The library, however, was indifferent to those sorts of things, and I could go there and immerse myself into old film books. Nosferatu was the main one for me. I remember opening up this one book, and I cannot remember the name of it. I remember the cover, but it was the scene of Max Schreck standing all rigid on the ship deck with his claws out. And for me, I just, that's all I needed. These images were so poignant that it was enough. It just sparked my imagination. This was like early 80s. So around mid 80s, I think it was when a home video became a thing. Everyone was renting their VCRs from Adventureland or whatever, local VHS video store there was popping up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we would rent VCRs. And honestly, I would go to Kmart, and they had their burgeoning VHS section that had a lot of old horror films. It was like the Wild West back then. Everyone was just putting things out on VHS while they could, probably without license. But there was one particular company called Good Times Video. And I remember the first video I got was Phantom of the Opera. And the next one I got was Creature from the Black Lagoon. So that's what it was for me. Just, I think the inspiration, the idea of these monsters more than actually the movie, because I didn't see half of these films until I was much older. Nosferatu, for example, I didn't see till I was 21 years old. So I spent, most of my life at that point just imagining what that film was about. And that's kind of what it did it for me, I guess, in a not so much nutshell.
Yeah, Pop. I could hearing about Steve and going to the library for all of these creatures, especially in Nosferatu and the Bible Belt, is it's just fun. But I felt the same way when you were going over the display case and you had all the figurines. Growing up, I read some comics, but really my superheroes were those characters, the classic Warner Brothers monsters.
Right.
That was who I loved. It wasn't so much Iron Man, especially not at that time. It was the Wolfman.
Yeah, from the Universal Studios, right?
Oh, Universal Studios. That's right.
Yeah.
No, exactly. And that's kind of what started it for me. And that kind of transitioned into, I became a musician, and then all of my songs and music started becoming about various and sundry monsters. And then that just, one fire fueled the other. And then I met Cortland. We met in 2015.
Yes.
When I moved to Connecticut. And
I arranged that he could be married by Vincent Price's daughter, Victoria.
So I married my wife here at the museum by Vincent Price's daughter, Victoria. And Cortland and I began working on the Nosferatu score. As he mentioned earlier, you had a copy from the Museum of Modern Art that came from Cinematheque Francois.
It was right from the negative of Nosferatu.
It was one of the ones that had, I guess, escaped the jurisdiction of Louis Stoker's estate. And it made it here, but the actual print that we transferred had never been transferred before. So the particular print that we have that I composed the score for is actually, it's a beautiful print.
Yeah, it's in very good condition. Yeah.
Yeah.
And speaking of Dracula, we do have Dracula's ring, which you probably showed it before, but this is in solid white gold. And Christopher Lee had one of these rings, and he wore it in all of his Dracula films. Look for it on his left hand, and he wears it on his pinky finger. And I asked Christopher Lee why he wore Lugosi's ring in his films, and he said when he was a teenager, he saw Bela perform Dracula on the stage, and this was his tribute to Bela to wear his ring.
And there's only one of three, correct?
One of three in solid white gold, yeah.
And the other one was Christopher Lee, and then Forey Ackerman had the other one.
Yeah.
Why do you think Universal was reticent to bring back Bela Lugosi for Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein? There's talk that they wanted. You go ahead.
That's a loaded question. Partially it's because of their bad editing of Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. It goes back to Ghost of Frankenstein. At the end of Ghost of Frankenstein, the monster was to get Igor's brain, but he became blind. He couldn't see, but he had Igor's voice. So it was natural when they did the next sequel, Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, that Lugosi played the monster. Well, then somebody at Universal decided all of a sudden, well, we're not going to have him talk. So that made the scenes with Bela look awkward because he's fumbling around because he was supposed to be blind. And so I think that may have had something to do with why Universal was reticent to cast him in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. But thank goodness they did, because he was the best part of that.
Well, yeah. If I may, like, one thing that was interesting about that too, it was a test showing. They showed it to people, and the problem was that audiences were laughing at I guess what was perceived as the hamminess of Lugosi speaking in the Monsters tone with his accent at that time. So, the studio is just not really being brave enough to just follow through with their decisions. We're like, let's cut it.
They just re-edited the whole film.
Yeah.
So we really got to get into the Wax Museum, or we're going to run out of time. Just before we do, I think you ought to see, these are raw makeup appliances that were given to me by John Chambers. The upper one from Planet of the Apes before the teeth were glued in. The lower one from Island of Dr. Moreau, the version that starred Burt Lancaster and Michael York. And then in back we have Lon Chaney Sr., the way he normally appeared. And of course, he was the master of makeup in the silent era of the 1920s.
We should show Peter Lorre, who never gets any love in terms of his monster contribution to the monster world.
And that's him from Mad Love, 1935.
You also had in the case a figurine of the Frankenstein monster and the Wolfman jumping.
Yes, that was done by Sideshow Collectibles.
And I saw it as you grazed past. I was appreciating it, so I quickly did a little search, and somebody was asking of the value of all of these items. Just that one figurine, quickly just searching, was going for over $1,100 for that one figurine, which it looks beautiful.
Not surprised.
This creature is exorbitant.
Wow, beautiful.
The creature is really probably the highest priced one. That one is going for several $1,000s, and you can see the sculpture is just magnificent.
And
that was done by Sideshow Collectibles.
Just one note here while we're here in this section, that is an actual piece of The Revenge of the Creature from the Black Lagoon, the sequel of Creature from the Black Lagoon. This was one of the suits given by Rico Browning, who played the underwater
creature. And they dyed foam rubber green, so that even if the cracks, we wouldn't notice the cracks as much. Oh. And then briefly, we'll have to show them the large Sideshow Collectible figures down here.
If I'm going too fast, let me know. Sorry, it's sensory overload here sometimes.
It's a lot, but I'm hearing Sideshow Collectibles a lot here.
Yes, well, I have to say they were very generous. They were the first to do a figure of my great uncle, actor Henry Hull. And they've been very generous over the years. They gave us most of these figures to put on display.
Well, you helped them as well, too, right? Because I think you came on as an advisor at one point regarding some of the monster makeups.
I sent them pictures of the Metal New Mutant. So when they did the Metal New Mutant, they got the colors the way it was in the film.
Wow.
And before we go into the other room, this is a model of my own creation, Zenobia, the Gypsy Witch. And I had originally given her to June Foray. Then after June passed away, the family gave it back to me for the museum. And believe it or not, in that picture of June Foray, June was 80 years old. So that's why you should do cartoon voices. It keeps you young. So let's go back in here and we'll do the introduction. And here we have, first of all, we have Vincent Price up here. And I took that photo, him holding my sculpture of Dr. Fives. And here we have Vincent himself, who's going to give you an introduction to our wax museum.
Welcome, poor mortal, to this witch's dungeon of nightmares. Beware and gather up all your courage, for we are about to begin.
And over here we have Jim Foray as Zenobia.
We can't hear her. It seems like Zoom is cutting out the audio. Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, Steve, the audio isn't coming through for her.
Can you still hear us though?
Yes, you're fine.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I think the problem with that is the speaker is set behind the sets, and so I think we're getting a little bit of like buffering on that.
Okay, so now we're going to enter the Wax Museum, and we have our ghost host, Count Pembroke. Here he is, and he's going to take into the Wax Museum.
Welcome. How do you do, Count?
Hello,
And
Count.
he's our interior decorator. He's tell him your association with interior decorating.
Actually, I'm a window dresser at Saks Avenue in Pennsylvania.
See?
There you go.
So what we have here, of course, we have Count Dracula, and we'll play the track for you. I hope you can hear it. If it doesn't work out, let us know.
Welcome to the Witch's Dungeon Wax Museum for a journey through the art of movie makeup, fantasy, and horror. We begin the tour with the Prince of the Undead himself. Lon Chaney Sr. was first chosen for the role of Count Dracula, but he passed away due to throat cancer not long before filming was to begin. Bela Lugosi eventually got the film role after performing it live on stage for countless performances. However, producers were concerned about his heavy Hungarian accent in these early days of sound recording, but that is what made Bela uniquely associated with the role.
I am Dracula. I bid you welcome. The spider spinning his web for the unwary fly. The blood is the light. There are far worse things waiting man than death.
Dracula was released on Valentine's Day in 1931.
And the headpiece of Bela, I sculpted based on the live cast that we showed you in the cabinet in the other room. Now, all of the sets now have vintage toys at the base of each set.
And in this case, a lot of them are Bela Lugosi related.
Yeah, that's right.
Once again, Sideshow.
And Batman hanging out there.
Because
there
Dracula is Batman.
And then
Batman. Over here we have a figure of him as White Zombie.
You just said because Dracula is Batman. What a wild concept.
Well, he does turn into a bat.
He does. I could see a few comics picking up that storyline. Yeah.
Bob Kane, he did. That's where Batman came from. He was inspired by the old Mary Reinhardt novel, The Bat. That's where the Joker was inspired by the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, The Man Who Laughs.
Right.
And the Penguin was basically Dr. Caligari.
So,
love it.
Before we go into the Phantom of the Opera, let's take a look at the figures that we have below here. These are all collectible toys. The Donald and Pluto is from the 1930s. That's an original line. And the Mickey and Minnie, that's an original line. And that's from 1930. The Betty Boop, that was given to me by Mae Questel, who was the voice of Betty Boop. And that's a porcelain figure.
It's signed by her too somewhere, right?
Yeah, but we can't pick it up yet and show it.
Wow, Pop, we had done that program on Betty Boop and censorship.
Yeah.
So here we have Howdy Doody, and our host, Count Pembroke, he's going to show you how Howdy Doody works. This is a violent toy.
Remember what happened last time?
Yes.
That didn't send you to the dentist, man.
So probably parents gave this to their kid to get even with them. That's right. Hey, Johnny, take a close look at this. Wow. Yeah, if you can go back, yeah.
Wow.
So here we have our Phantom of the Opera set, and we have the Eric the Phantom, and then, of course, the Red Death from the Phantom of the Opera.
But just if I may, just to kind of point out the attention to detail we try to, pay attention to here. We just got this recently. This was put out by Trick or Treat Studios, but it's a fairly accurate representation of what's called the humanoid mask that Chaney wore in the film prior to him being unmasked. And what's interesting about this mask, and I believe this is actually on display at the Museum of Natural History in Los Angeles, or at least it was at one point. The bottom of the eyes right here, the pupils are cut out, but the white of the eye is still there, which gave it a very sinister, kind of unearthly vibe when he was looking around. Like there's the one part where he comes out of the orchestra pit and looks up at Christine, and you really notice it in that scene. But so much detail in his makeups.
And let's look at the Red Death, because I sculpted the Red Death mask based on Chaney. And my mom was a Broadway costume designer, so she recreated the costume accurately to the film. And of course, everything is decorated for holidays, obviously. And even we have vintage Santa Clauses. This one is from the 1950s that we restored. My mom did the costume all over again, and she made the beard out of angel hair, which is not easy to work with because that's spun glass. And so that was originally in a jewelry store.
Sorry, we're going to cut some of this Christmas music down in here so you guys can hear.
Oh, the Christmas music doesn't come through. It's being filtered out.
Okay.
All right, yep. Perfect. All right.
And of course, here we have the organ, the Phantom's organ with Christine just above there.
One of the joys that we experience as viewers, seeing you, Stephen Cortland, is the passion that you have for this museum. You can feel how much you're attached to every part of the museum.
Well, we enjoy sharing it with people. That's really one of the main reasons for doing it. And we have a vintage Santa Claus here with a Kenner C3PO R2D2.
You were a lucky kid if you got these.
Wow.
Do people contact you if they have items that they think you might want?
Well, they can. We have a lot of resources ourselves for getting them, but we're always open to whatever somebody might want to donate as well. Here we have the most handsome vampire of all, Nosferatu, with his pet rats. And notice they're decorated for Christmas too.
Nosferatu by director F.W. Murnau terrified audiences just a few years after the pandemic of 1918, often carried by rats. The familiar of Count Orlok, played by Max Schreck, a vampire classic which influenced many others that followed it.
Let us chat together a moment, my friend. There are things several hours until dawn, and I have the whole day.
This symphony of horror was released in Germany in 1922.
Cortland, are there any items that you're currently seeking out?
Well, I love Tim Burton films, and if there was anything prop from a Tim Burton film, I'd love to have that. Like, say, from Sleepy Hollow or his stop-motion animation figures from Nightmare Before Christmas or Corpse Bride, something like that in particular, yes.
Sleepy Hollow was wonderful.
Yeah.
Yes. So over here we have our Bride of Frankenstein set, and I got a chance to talk with Elsa Lanchester back when I was 15 years old. And I always wondered about her hair because, oftentimes her hair is pictured as being black. Well, it wasn't. It was reddish brown. But in black and white film, reddish brown becomes black. And she told me it was partially her own hair that was weaved into the wig that she wore. And she says, of course, nowadays, that was by the time I talked to her, she was, now the color of my hair comes from a bottle.
And we have
And the Frankenstein monster head, that was sculpted by Dick Smith.
Which is essentially the same as the one that was on the Saturday Evening Post.
I'd love to know the statistics of your museum. You know, how many Frankenstein monsters, how many Nosferatus, you know, can you find them all?
Yeah.
That's it.
Sort of like finding the hidden Mickey
Yes.
Mouse.
Yes.
And so here we have a whole other selection of toys down below. The rarest is this pinball, or not pinball, I mean ball toss Frankenstein, because that is loaded with spikes, very sharp spikes. So that didn't last on the market too long.
Yeah. A great kid's toy.
Johnny was going to smack Jimmy down on the board, you know, it wasn't too good. But the figure of Gene Wilder is signed by Gene Wilder from Young Frankenstein. And the other Frankenstein over here is that one is kind of rare as well.
This one?
And this one. Oh, I meant that one.
Isn't that creepy?
He doesn't look like Frankenstein because they didn't have the license to make them as Frankenstein.
But there's also all these little old Donald Duck right here, I believe, right?
Yeah, that's in the 30s.
Wind-up guy.
Another quick question for you. It's reported that when Mel Brooks made Young Frankenstein, he was able to use the original laboratory equipment from the original Frankenstein movies.
Yeah.
Do you know where that equipment is today?
Well, I don't know what happened to it afterward, but I know that was Kenneth Strickfaden. He was the one that did all the Frankenstein equipment for the Universal Frankenstein films. And they also used it in some other films made by MGM as well.
Which, speaking of,
we recreated this one very accurately the way it was in the original film from Bride of Frankenstein.
And you had pointed out that the glass was actually a dark amber in those films, right? Which is why you painted it brown.
Yes. Oh, you mean yes. This was amber in the original film. I found a color photograph of it. So we try to be as accurate as possible.
Speaking of, for example, when you see this sticker, it says abnormal brain. That's actually from a screenshot that I'd taken from the film and then blew it up, put it in Procreate, and tried to recreate it as accurately as possible. It's not just, random font there.
Wow.
I know we're running really tight here. What are your plans for 2025?
Well, we're going to add some more figures, but let's not talk about that. I want us to have you see the whole tour, because if we get off on that subject.
Okay, let's go.
All right, we're up for it.
Henry Hall is the Werewolf of London, and we have an array of bottles like what he had in the film. And these are all from the late 1890s and early 1900s. And we also have the new figure that Super 7 came out with of Uncle Henry as Werewolf of London. And that's got our logo back too. And then over here we have Steve's favorite, the Invisible Man.
Yeah. Cortland and I built this guy.
Claude Rains. And speaking of the Invisible Man, Sideshow Collectibles made something special for me. A model carrier, a figure of the Invisible Man that truly is invisible. Then over here we have Dr. Fives, and the photograph that you saw in the lobby where Vincent Price is holding the head, that was the head that I based that on. I resculpted it a little bit more and added glass eyes.
And this is a real Edison Morning Glory horn, correct?
Yes.
All right.
So if Count Pembroke can open the curtain, we'll go on. And we have the Beast over here from the French version of Beauty and the Beast, La Belle and la Bête. And that was Jean Marais who played the Beast. And if you notice the hairs on it, they're put on one hair at a time on him. And that was took 4 hours to do that makeup. And then, of course, we have a number of toys here. Here is, we forgot to put his moon on. What's the Wolfman without his moon? Wait a minute. There we go. And that figure I sculpted, and we did 2 of them. The other one was used at Universal in their Monsters Cafe. And that was down there for almost 20 years before it closed.
Are you looking forward to their new Monsterland?
I hope so. I say that because I hope they're going to be accurate to the classic films.
Yeah. They should be talking to you guys, definitely, as a resource for the history of this.
Well, that's up to them. An original, this is the Wolf's Head cane. Of course, that's where Lon Chaney was killed by his father, Claude Rains. And that's cast from the original Wolf's Head cane. If you notice some of the toys here, we have some 8mm films of the Wolfman and Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. And then we have a little figure of the Wolfman that likes to grab ladies' legs, if you notice that. And then here we have Boris Karloff as Imhotep the Mummy.
Wow. Beautiful.
The 32 film. And then we also have Lon Chaney Jr. as Kharis from the sequels that were made in the 40s. And then we have Boris Karloff here as Dr. Niemann, otherwise known as Professor Lampini, because he had killed Professor Lampini and took over his Chamber of Horrors. And by doing so, he acquired the actual skeleton of Count Dracula. And he's decorated for the season as well. And so we also have above us is Quasimodo, Charles Lawton as the Hunchback of Notre Dame. We would play the audio tracks for you, but we don't have time for that.
Well, we'll just have to come in person if we want to hear them.
Right, that's right. So, and Count Pembroke here is guiding us into the other room.
Thank you,
have the Claude Rains Phantom of the Opera from the sequel in the 1940s. And they used the actual opera house set that was built for Lon Chaney Sr. And then next to that, we have the Mole People. That was from 1950s. And again, that was done by the team of Chris Mueller and Jack Keeban at Universal, as was the creature from the Black Lagoon. And the Mole Man was taken from actual casting of the character in the film, as is the creature. We had several parts of the creature that myself and other collectors had, and we put them all together, and then we cast it in fiberglass because it was deteriorating badly. And here we have Vincent Price as Professor Jared from the House of Wax, which was made in 3D in 1953 in Technicolor. And he was trapped in the Wax Museum by his partner. He was horribly disfigured because of that. And but he sought his revenge, and he turned his partner into a wax figure. By the way, the actual suit on that figure that you see underneath here is the suit that Vincent wore in the film, and he gave it to us as a gift for the museum.
Did Vincent see these exhibits of himself?
Oh, yes, yeah. And then over here we have the golem from the 1920 film, Germany. And that was a stone figure that was brought to life by little scrolls of mystic symbols that were used in the film.
And that's a replication of that scroll, going back to the font again.
A lot of graphic designing going on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Between both of us, Steve and myself, there's a lot of things that had to be fabricated and as accurate as possible to the film.
So going back to screenshotting, this one, I took a screenshot from the film. Can't really see it very well, but this is kind of the, I guess, blueprint, you would say.
Yeah.
Of the golem. And then there was also this kind of more expressionistic version of it in the background. Let's put on a scroll here.
I want to be respectful of everyone's time. We are at 11 o'clock. Cortland and Steve, are you okay to continue?
Yes, we
Absolutely.
are. All right.
All right. If anybody has to go, we are recording. It'll be up on YouTube. You'll be able to watch and catch up. But for the meantime, we want to continue right now and see the rest.
Okay. Well, we just wanted to show you Vincent Price's ending for this part of the tour, and he did this for us.
Ah, there you are. I see you have survived this maze of monsters and nightmares. Or have you? So until we meet again, good night and pleasant dreams.
So now we're going down the hallway, and we're going to show you the Emmerich.
Oh, Steve, can you go back to landscape?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, I can. There we go.
Thank you. There we go.
Yeah, it was a little tight in there. It was better for portrait.
It was good. Yeah, we got to see a lot of the costumes, head to toe.
All right, let's go in here. So our newest acquisition, which I don't think you guys saw last year, this was a story getting this here. Holy.
And this was originally built 1957 by 20th Century Fox, and it was used in the Death Set with Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn. Then again in the original Fly with David Tennison, and eventually it was used in every episode of Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. And this is our newest acquisition, the Dork helmet from Dave the Erskine Smith. And that was worn by Lot Martin. He was 7 foot 7 inches tall. And if you go down the road, Steve, you can see the holes that he had to look at from the bottom of the chin. That's all he could see. He had to look through those holes from the bottom of the chin of the big robot head. So that was one of the newest acquisitions we have.
And that was donated to us by Bill Malone.
Not Floyd.
No. I'm talking about the Emmerich.
Yeah, the Emmerich. That was Bill Malone that donated that to the museum. Chris Gilman donated the Dork helmet from Global Effects. And then up here we have the Fly, and the headpiece of the Fly was done. That's the actual one, the original mold of the headpiece that David Tennison wore in the film. And then, of course, we have the original E.T. That's the actual E.T. that was used in the film when it was originally made for all the long shots, which you saw when they were in the bike. And here we have some toys related to it.
We just watched E.T. as a family for the first time. I have a couple of young kids, and the movie is just as impactful as ever. It really is.
Yeah. And then over here we have the Golden Idol from Raiders of the Lost Ark. And if you notice, there's a baby coming out between her legs. You don't notice that much in the movie, but that's why she was the fertility goddess for the natives. That's why the natives were so anxious to get her back.
You want to show the autograph on the bottom, or
I can, yeah.
Watch out, Timbro, because there'll be a giant boulder coming your way.
Signed by Karen Allen and John Royce Davies. who is also in the film. Now we just have to have Harrison Ford sign. If you notice there's screw hole, that tells us this was the first one you saw in the film because they screwed it to the base because the base dropped. So the whole set did. And they had to make sure it was secure.
You got this guy here. This is worth mentioning.
And of course, this is a 35 millimeter projector from the 1940s. And here you see 15 minutes of film. They would have to change the reel every 15 minutes. And they would go from one projector to the other. And back in the 20s and 30s, film was done on nitrate, which was highly flammable. So if the film got caught in the gate here, the whole reel could go up. So the projectionists had to be trained as firemen as well. And this is what we call an arc lamp projector. There are two carbon rods. They create a spark. Spark gives you the light, which you see, which is magnified by the curved mirror and back. And this got incredibly hot. That's why the whole unit is made of wrought iron. And there would be a chimney that go from here up to the roof to cool it. So this is very, very heavy. We don't move this around much.
All right.
So that's basically it. We sort of rushed through part of the tour so you could see the rest of it.
We did, but that's all right. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to see how you've enhanced it and added so much for the holiday season.
People really should see it in person because
Absolutely.
You can't really get a feel for it just in this quick tour of the game.
That's right. Yes, it shows us enough to pique our interest and definitely want to see more.
Yes, and occasionally Count Pembroke will give you the tour when you visit.
Well, that would be great. I have to say, Count, every once in a while as the camera is panning around, you really do blend right in with all of the figurines and the statues. It's a little creepy.
Helps fill the atmosphere.
It does. It does.
And aside from the Count, Cortland, Steve, are you both there regularly, or do you take turns coming in?
Well, I'm here most all the time. Yeah.
I'm generally here when I'm not out on tour or doing something musical, which is kind of seasonal right now. There's not a lot happening. So I'm here as much as I can be. And we just primarily we target projects when we can and then kind of triangulate around that.
Yeah, because I can tell you, I know our guests would love to meet you in person.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, we'd love to meet anyone. I mean, anyone interested in coming out and seeing us. We're open weekends, generally throughout the year. It's Friday through Sunday. Saturdays are 3 p.m.
Saturday and Sunday.
3 p.m. till 9. Yeah.
3 p.m. to 9.
And then Friday is it's 6 to 9. Yeah, that's what we're doing now. So, and you can go online and book reservations for tours, all that fun stuff.
Yep, I have your website up here, which is wonderful. You also have a lot of holiday decorations on the website itself.
Thank you.
Yeah. You have a gift shop. Would it be possible for people to email you if they were interested in anything? Are you able to ship? Or is it all in store?
So the problem, we're in store at the moment. There's some stuff that's out of stock on the website. However, if you do want to reach out, we can work something out in terms of just arranging to do it. Because right now everything's set up online through a point of sale, which is not, for a number of reasons, like operable.
Yep.
But yeah, if anyone has any interest in anything like that, just reach out, send us an email, drop a DM in the Witches Dungeon Instagram, or you can email. I think there's a contact button on the website, and we'll get that.
Here, let me.
But yeah, we do have.
I'll pull that up. Here we go.
Alrighty. Yeah, there we are.
Great, and I'll add that into the chat.
Perfect.
We also have, I'm going to continue looking over your social here, but we have a quick question. Have you ever seen any photographs pop up about Lon Chaney Sr. portraying, they did some test shots of him portraying Jesus?
We haven't come across that.
No. I've seen Bela Lugosi portray Jesus.
Yes.
The photos of him, but not Lon Chaney.
No.
Oh, yeah. Wow. It's wonderful. I still would love to see the count of how many Frankensteins, how many Wolfmen.
We should absolutely try to incorporate something like that. It's kind of like guessing how many jelly beans are in the jar.
And by the way, the MRAC machine that you saw, there's over 800. And it's amazing it still works so perfectly since it was built in 1957.
Wow.
So we transported that all the way from California. I had a friend of mine. Actually, I have friends that work at the Whiskey A Go-Go. So my band plays there pretty frequently. And I ended up procuring some bouncers at the Whiskey A Go-Go to go pick this thing up, literally, because it's so heavy.
It weighs 500 pounds
or
more.
And then we ended up getting it stationed at our friend Chris Gilman's place for a little while. And then my friend, we hired to drive out from Reno, Nevada in a Ryder truck, pick it up and drive it all the way across country. And then we ended up putting it up.
Because we didn't want to test or try some delivery service because it's one of a kind.
Yeah, he's made it this far.
You cannot replace it. And to our delight, once it arrived, we only just had to plug it in and it worked immediately.
The back of that thing is insane. Like every single one of those lights is about a 1/4 inch jack switchboard style connector. It looks like an old World War I switchboard.
And still working great.
Show it to them again. I want to. If the studio wanted to make it look like it was dessert, this is what it would do.
Just giving my heads up. So it's.
Wow.
Well, I hate to say this, but this is our final virtual road trip for the year.
Oh, well, thanks for sharing it with us.
Yeah, and we'll be coming back in 2025 with a lot of new things, right, Darren?
That's right. When we return, we're heading over to the Barnum Museum, again, in Connecticut, not too far from you guys. We have the Circus Historical Society, the Museum of Classic Sci-Fi, Titanic Experience. There's a lot more already in store for 2025, but this is a wonderful way to conclude 2024. So if any of you have a hankering next Monday, you can always head over to our past virtual road trips right there at the top of our screen and catch up with all of our past virtual road trips. Maybe some you've missed, maybe some you'd like to revisit, but they're all there for your convenience to have some fun and click away. And here's our original tour of the Witch's Dungeon. So feel free to click.
And this will be put up soon?
Absolutely. Yep. And it'll also be added to the list.
Excellent.
So, all of us at the Witch's Dungeon wish you all a very happy holiday.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Merry Christmas. Happy holiday. Thank you, gentlemen.
All right. Thank you very much. We'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays. Bye-bye.